6 moons had passed since the night the river gave Maro 2 children from one egg. The season has shifted. The flood waters have long withdrawn, leaving the banks thick with reeds and summer flowers. Yet in River Glint the murmurs had not faded. Whispers followed the twins wherever they went, rippling from one hearth to another, like a current no one admitted to stirring. Maro felt it every time she stepped into the village. Amber eyes turned, some filled with curiosity, some with unease. Thea darted ahead with a squeal, pale fur flashing in the sun, her tiny paws splashing through shallow pools as though the river itself was her plaything. Nox lingered near her shadow, darker even than the stones beneath the water, watchful and silent. Though only half a year old, wherever she went, he followed. Wherever she slowed, she tugged him forward. Maro's tail twitched with every glance, every muttered word she caught at the edge of hearing. 2 from 1, an omen, a sign. She walked stiffly, keeping her children close, wishing she could shield them from eyes as easily as she shielded them from rain. Elderbrook was the first to greet them, as he always was. He sat on his usual stone near the river bend, staff across his knees, his leaf-brim hat tinkling with the weight of charms tied there. His clouded eyes brightened when the twins approached, and he spreads his arms as though to gather the whole river in an embrace. "Ah, the little currents return to the flow," he called, voice rolling like a story's beginning. Thea giggled, dashing toward him without hesitation, while Nox followed at a quieter pace. Brooke tapped his staff once, chuckling. "Still side by side. Good, good. The river remembers." Maro inclined her head, but said little. She trusted Brooke's warmth more than Cress's sharpness, but even his riddles sometimes stung. She turned at the sound of vines rustling, finding elder nettle nearby. Her massive form bent low as she tended riverbank plants. The tangrowth lifted her gaze and gave Maro a soft nod, her vines twitching in a gesture like a smile. Yet further down the bank stood Crest, tall and stern, his golden eyes like cold light on water. He said nothing, but his stare lingered long on Thea's brightness, then shifted to Nox's silence, as if measuring them against the stories he clung to. Maro's fur prickled. 6 months had passed, but still she felt as though every step was a trial, every breath weighed against the myths River Glint carried. And still her twins grew, one loud and bright, the other quiet and steady, 2 halves bound together, as inseparable as the river's own flow. Thea bounded past Brooke's stone, her paws scattering droplets that caught the light. "Come on, Nox," she chirped, turning back with her wide pink eyes alight. "Slow water dries up." Nox followed without complaint, his small frame slipping between reeds like a shadow, his blue gaze steady. He didn't hurry, but his pace never broke. Wherever Thea's laughter rang out, he was there, close enough to touch. It was then they nearly collided with a round yellow blur waddling out from the shallows, dripping wet feathers and shaking as though the river had wronged her. "Hey!" Thea squeaked, skidding to a halt. The Psyduck blinked up at them, water dripping from her uneven fluff. Her wide eyes gave her a startled look, but her bill tugged into something almost mischievous. She tilted her head, squinting at them as though trying to puzzle out a secret. "You're shiny," she said bluntly to Thea, voice high and plain. like a fish scale. Thea blinked, startled, and then giggled, puffing her pale chest proudly. Mama says I glow like moon water. But you, she pointed with a paw, eyes wide. You look like you fell in the river and forgot to get out. The Psyduck let out a loud snort of laughter, rubbing her bill with one webbed hand until it squeaked. Maybe I did. She leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Don't tell the elders. They'd probably call it an omen. Thea gasped, delighted. Me too, she blurted, then glanced nervously back towards Maro. Well, not falling in the river, but omens. They say things about me and Nox all the time. Nox stepped forward at last, quiet and steady, placing himself between Thea and the new duck. His gaze wasn't sharp, just measured. Who are you? The Psyduck blinked again, then grinned wide and crooked. Fyra, she said simply. Who are you? Thea, the pale weasel beamed, puffing her fins. And this is my brother, Nox. He's quiet, but only because he thinks too much. I don't, Nox started, but stopped when Fyra giggled. Well, Fyra said, tilting her head until water dripped from her bill. If you're omens, then I guess I'm one too. The fell in and forgot how to swim omen. She gave a little shrug, as though being odd were no weight at all. Thea's laughter burst out, bright as sunlight. I like you! Nox's expression didn't change much, but the faintest curve of his mouth betrayed him. He stayed close to Thea's side, but his eyes no longer carried suspicion. From the riverbank, Mara watched, her tail flicking with unease at how quickly the children had found each other, at how loudly Thea laughed. But she said nothing. For once, the whispers of River Glint seemed far away. Fyra squatted in the shallows, scooping up a handful of wet pebbles and letting them spill through her webbed fingers. Want to see something funny? She asked, eyes glinting with mischief. Yes, Thea blurted before Nox could answer. She leaned forward eagerly, fins quivering with anticipation. Fyra picked the roundest stone and tossed it high into the air. It came down with a plop. Not far, not graceful, just a splash that drenched them all. Thea squealed and clapped her paws together. Do it again! Nox shook the droplets from his fur, unamused but patient. That was just a splash. That's the funny part, Fyra said, rubbing her bill until it squeaked again. I throw and the river does the work. I don't have to do anything. Thea laughed so hard she tipped sideways into the mud. You're silly, she said through giggles, wriggling back onto her paws. Come on, let's see who can throw farther. She snatched a pebble, wound back her arm, and hurled it with all the force her small body could manage. It plunked down barely farther than Fyra's. She puffed her cheeks in mock outrage. The river's tricking me! Or you're just loud about it, Nox said softly, though his whiskers twitched as though hiding a smile. Fyra tilted her head at him, thoughtful. You don't talk much, do you? He shrugged. I don't need to. She tapped her bill, water squeaking again. Then I'll talk enough for both of us, and she pointed at Thea, who was already grabbing another stone, talks enough for 10. Thea spluttered, paw frozen mid-throw, then burst out laughing again. That's true! She tossed the pebble anyway, sending it splashing wide. Nox, your turn! For a moment he hesitated, watching the two of them, Thea shining like sunlight on water, Fyra wobbling with unapologetic strangeness. Then quietly he picked a flat stone, flicked his wrist, and sent it skipping across the surface with 3 clean bounces before it sank. Thea gasped.
You didn't tell me you could skip them!
Fyra clapped her webbed hands together, eyes wide.
See? He's sneaky. You gotta watch out for the quiet ones.
Thea flung herself against his side, laughing so brightly it echoed across the reeds. Nox allowed the contact, steady as ever, but his eyes were softer than usual, reflecting the ripples in the water. From the willow's shade, Mara watched them play. Her chest was tight, her breath shallow. She could almost believe this was ordinary. 3 children tossing stones, the river carrying their laughter downstream. But even as she watched, she knew the whispers would return. The elders would still debate. Crest would still glower, and Riverglint would still wonder what fate the twins carried. Yet for this moment, the river's song was only joy. From the opposite bank, where reeds grew thick and shadows draped long across the water, and Elder Circle lingered. They had not followed Mara openly, no. She would bristle at that, but they still watched. For 6 moons they had measured each step of the twins' growth, each tilt of their heads, each ripple they left in the river's flow. Elderbrook leaned on his staff, his cloudy eyes sparkling with mirth as the children's laughter rang out. And so the river braids a new thread, he murmured, charms on his brim jingling softly. See how the pale one shines brighter with company, and the dark one steadies when pulled into play. The currents already weave together, stronger for the meeting. Elder Nettle's vines swayed, the silver streaks glinting in the fading light. She hummed low, almost like a lullaby. It warms me to see them laughing, she said. The river's weight is heavy on such small shoulders, yet ere they forget it, that sight of child, she treats them as they are, not what the stories say. Cress's gaze was sharp, unblinking as he watched Fyra tilt her head and squeak her bill, sending Thea into another fit of giggles. Or she will lead them to foolishness, he countered, his voice clipped as riverstone. Children who grow without discipline becomes currents that flood their banks. You heard it yourself, Nettle. The girl mocks the omens. If others follow her, Riverglint will forget caution. Or remember joy, Brooke chuckled, tapping his staff as though to punctuate the thought. Even rivers must laugh in their shallows, Crest. Do you begrudge them this? Cress's jaw tightened, but he said no more. His golden eyes stayed on the twins, narrowing as Nox skipped another stone across the surface. 3, 4, 5 bounces before it sank. They will grow, Crest said at last, his voice low. And when they do, we must be ready. The river has given us a warning. It is only a matter of when it crests. Nettle's vines twinned tighter around her, but her tone remained calm. And until then, we give them kindness. Let them be children, at least a while. Brooke only chuckled again, his voice fading into the hum of the current. The river writes its stories in laughter, as well as in flood. Across the water, Thea's laughter pealed again, answered by Fyra's snort and Nox's rare fleeting smile. The elders stood in silence, the weight of myths pressing on them all, even as the children wove their own current of joy. By nightfall, the laughter had quieted. replaced by the hum of cicadas and the steady rush of the river beyond the willow roots. Maro padded into her hollow with Thea draped over her back and Nox trailing close at her heels. Both were damp, muddy, and smelling of reeds, their eyes drooping with exhaustion after a full day of play. She lowered Thea gently onto the moss bed, and the pale child wriggled its softness, letting out a contented squeak before curling close to her brother. Nox settled without fuss, tucking his muzzle against Thea's flank as though guarding her even in sleep. Their breaths soon fell into rhythm, rising and falling like twin waves against the same shore. Maro sat beside them, tail curled tightly, amber eyes tracing every twitch of their tiny paws. Her chest was heavy, caught between pride and fear. Pride, because she has seen them laugh today, truly laugh, not just squeak with infant confusion. Fear, because every glance, every whisper, every elder's murmur, they had reminded her that River Glint saw more than children. They saw omens. Her claws dug into the earth at the thought. She could still hear Cress's voice echoing in her head. Two born of one, a warning. The words clung to her like burrs, sharper for the truth she refused to let them hold. Maro bent low, brushing her nose against the crowns of their heads. Thea stirred, sighing softly, and Nox shifted closer, never breaking contact with his sister. "You are mine," Maro whispered, so low the river could not steal it away. "Not stories, not omens, just mine." Her tail brushed over their small forms, tucking them in against the cool night. She lay awake long after their breaths had deepened, her amber eyes fixed on the hollow's mouth where starlight bled in. The elders would keep watching. The whispers would not fade. But for tonight, she could pretend the world was only this. Two small lives pressed close, safe in her keeping. And for tonight, that was enough.